الله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي الحمد لله رب العالمين ثم الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المأسومين واللعنة على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد, respected elders, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today marks Tuesday night, where we have our continuing discussion around the lives of the Ahlul Bayt. And we're continuing our discussion around the life of the sixth Imam Jafar ibn Muhammad as-Sadiq alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Today I wanted to kind of go through and talk about some of the political environment and some of the historical information about Imam Sadiq. May not always be discussed, but is worth talking about. And inshallah, next week we'll continue this discussion as well in talking about the life of our sixth Imam. We always ask that you guys participate and support these programs by signing up to recite the dua as well. As it would be great to have more of our community participate, especially our kids and younger members of the community, to promote them to recite this dua, Dua-e-Tawassul, to ask by the wasila of Ahlul Bayt, is something important and significant that we shouldn't neglect in our families and in our households. And it's a great way to kind of get started in promoting this in our houses by making it a really low stress, easy process to join in and to make sure that they participate in this program. Briefly for today's discussion, right? Let's take a look at some of the background. Our sixth Imam, Imam Sadiq, is born on the 17th of Rabiul Awwal. He actually shares his birthday with the Holy Prophet. This within itself is being born on a day that is already mutabarrik. And to some extent, we today narrated as the affiliation that the Prophet is the one who brought the message and Imam Sadiq is the one who spread it and made sure that it was taught and learned correctly. And one was the originator and one was the proliferator. And both of these personalities are very important and significant to us in history. With regards to the lineage of Imam Sadiq, his father is obviously our fifth Imam, Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. His mother is Farwa, whose name was Fatima bint Qasim ibn Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr. This lady, Farwa, is a very pious character in the history of Islam and one whose family and lineage is very closely tied to the Ahlul Bayt. There is a false attribution that's done to our sixth Imam where he supposedly takes honor about the fact that Farwa takes her lineage from Abu Bakr. Anjabatni Abi Bakrin marratain is the famous statement, that I am from the lineage of Abu Bakr twice. And what it's meant to say is that Farwa is bint Qasim bint Muhammad bin Abi Bakr. So that's the father side. Farwa's mother's side was also going back to one of the other children of Abi Bakr, and therefore she had two parts of her lineage from Abu Bakr, and that supposedly sixth Imam would be pleased with this and say, Anjabatni, I am from Abu Bakr's lineage twice. We don't believe that this is a statement the Imam would make, and there's a number of reasons for that. One is that if this was a thing to be proud of, it was more proud to be that he was from the lineage of Abi Talib many times over. Many times over. But that's not the argument the Imam makes. The other reason is that with regards to the lineage of Farwa, her father being Qasim, who was one of the representatives, the jurists of the city of Medina and the students of Imam Zain al-Abidin, and one of the close affiliates of Imam Zain al-Abidin. Meaning Qasim himself took honor in the affiliation lineage to Ahlul Bayt, not to the Khulafa. And same thing with Muhammad bin Abi Bakr. Muhammad bin Abi Bakr, Imam Ali would describe Muhammad kana ibni walau min sulbi Abi Bakr. That Imam Ali would describe this Muhammad bin Abi Bakr as saying that Muhammad is my son, though he may be from the backbone of Abi Bakr. And famously in the Battle of Jamal, which was fought against the daughter of Abu Bakr, the son of Abu Bakr, Muhammad bin Abi Bakr, is fighting on the side and is a general in the army of Amir al-Mu'mineen. So meaning that the true dignity that was possessed amongst this family of Farwa was their affiliation and close proximal relationship to Ahlul Bayt. And that her piety and her character was something that was a demonstration that she was one of the most, if not the most pious lady of her time, and was someone who had great character and was someone who came from a family of religious scholarship, married into a family of religious scholarship, and her son was the reflection of religious scholarship. There's an interesting discourse that talks about that. Why is Imam Jafar called as-Sadiq? And famously, there's a narration from our fourth Imam, Ali ibn al-Hussain Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad, that describes and says that he was given the title because Imam Sadiq was born in the time of Imam Zain al-Abidin. Imam Sadiq spent the first 12 years of his life under the care of his grandfather, Imam Zain al-Abidin. Famously, there's a correlation between these two that says that when you look at the du'as and the munajat narrated by Imam Sadiq, you hear the voice and the tone of Imam Zain al-Abidin in them, that there was an influence of his grandfather in his own dua as well too, and which is why some of the du'as and the discussions from Imam Jafar-e-Sadiq in terms of supplication of Allah would be something that would remind you of Imam Zain al-Abidin. But his title as-Sadiq, it was introduced to us by Imam Zain al-Abidin. And when they asked, لماذا سميت as-Sadiq? Why is he given the name of Sadiq? أوليس كلكم صادق? Are not all of you truthful? And the answer comes that Imam Zain al-Abidin explains that Rasulullah himself gave this title of as-Sadiq to Ja'far ibn Muhammad, and that he was given this title of Ja'far as-Sadiq in comparison to the other Ja'far that would come later in the lineage of Ahlul Bayt, who would be known as Ja'far al-Kadhib. Ja'far al-Kadhib was a brother of the 11th Imam, Imam Hassan al-Askari alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. That Ja'far was the one who tried to steal the imamat. That Ja'far was the one who tried to have our 12th Imam persecuted. He repented from his ways, but he was given the title Ja'far al-Kadhib, and that Ja'far as-Sadiq was the title given to Imam Sadiq to contrast with the personality of Ja'far al-Kadhib, and that's where his title comes from, and that's the fundamental of it. There are other descriptions and other intellectual discourses that talk about the significance of Imam Sadiq being called as-Sadiq, that he was called the truthful one. And many of those point to the idea that his sidq, his truthfulness, was universally accepted. That when you look at the fundamentals of any Islamic theology that exists today, it will find influence at some point from the teachings of Imam Sadiq. And same thing in the dawr that Imam Sadiq was alive, his students weren't just those who agreed with him ideologically, but were all of the people from all of the different walks of life that came, meaning that his truthfulness was something that was universally accepted and not sequestered to one ideology, one group of people who believed in him and others who refused to believe in him, but rather that his was a character that was recognized as truthful, honest, a source of goodness and teaching, and reliability upon the words of the Prophet. Now remember something, the time of our sixth Imam is where all those who had met the Prophet have passed. The time of our sixth Imam is where the connection to our Prophet's teachings has been made weak or lost, because again, during the earlier time periods, they prevented the writing of hadith. The companions were not allowed to spread out the information that they possessed. So it was something that history, that knowledge of Islam would have been lost had it not been that there is a truthful one recognized by everybody as truthful, who again reintroduced those teachings amongst society. So this is another explanation of where that title of as-Sadiq comes from. The life of the Imam has three main sections in terms of family history. The first is the time with Imam Zain al-Abidin, which is 12 years. Then from the age of 12 to 31, he is in the company of his father, Imam al-Baqir. And then from 31, for the next 34 years until the age of 65, he is Imam-e-Waqt. He is the Imam of the time. Now, during the span of 65 years, in some books it can be as long as 68 years or short as 63 years or 61 years, but essentially the common middle ground is that many mufassirin, many historians, mu'arrikhin, compile to approximately 65 years after Hijrah of his lifespan. What was the political situation going on? Because very famously, we know that it was the political situation that was weak that allowed the Imam to be able to spread the religion of Islam. Now, the Imam assumes his imamate in the year 114, which is during the Khilafat of Hisham ibn Abdul Malik, Hisham being the one mal'un who was responsible for the assassination and the shahadat of Imam al-Baqir. This time was a time of severe persecution. But at the death of Hisham in the year approximately 125, a window opened that the Banu Umayyah were in a state of weakness and that uprisings were happening against them. One of the uprisings that was being designed by the Banu Hashim was an uprising under a personality by the name of Muhammad ibn Abdullah ibn Hassan ibn Hassan. Muhammad ibn Abdullah is also known as Muhammad al-Nafs al-Zaki, the purified soul. This was a group of the Banu Hashim, and khususan Muhammad's father, Abdullah ibn Hassan, who had gathered the Banu Hashim and prepared them to follow his son Muhammad as being the leader of the Banu Hashim to uprise against the Banu Umayyah. In a place called Abwa, which is near Medina but not within Medina, all of the Banu Hashim gathered together. And this was approximately in the year 126. So a year after Hisham ibn Abdul Malik dies, the despot who was responsible for the murder of Imam al-Baqir, who was causing stringency upon the Ahlul Bayt, causing persecution of the Shia, he dies. 126 approximately, the Banu Hashim gather together. And Abdullah ibn Hassan presents his son, Muhammad ibn Abdullah, and gathers the Banu Hashim. And gathers Imam Sadiq as well too. And this event is very famous in history, that Imam Sadiq comes and he sits with all of his cousins and all of his relatives. And Abdullah ibn Hassan, being one of the older ones present, gathers everybody and says that, hey, listen, this is a key opportunity for us to rise up and overthrow the Banu Umayyah. And we're going to do this, and we're going to do this now because present amongst us is the Mahdi. Everybody looks around like, what? The Mahdi's here? Now, understand something. When we talk about the Mahdi, the one who will be the guide for humanity, the one who will be from the lineage of Rasulullah, will be an assistant to the people, will change the world and fill it with justice, this isn't a concept that originated now. This concept was present from the time of Rasulullah forward. And people have been waiting for the coming of Imam Zaman from that time after Rasulullah until today. And which is why after the shahadat of Imam Hussain, one of the beliefs that became established in society was that Allah would put all of the Imams under Imam Hussain, but the Mahdi would come from Imam Hassan's lineage. And sure enough, Abdullah ibn Hassan, who is from the lineage of Imam Hassan, presents his son and he says, this son of mine, Muhammad, is the Mahdi. And this is why all of us Banu Hashim are going to gather under him, and he will lead us against the Banu Umayyah. And this is approximately the year 126 after Hijrah. Now, many of the Banu Hashim that were there accepted this, including from amongst the Banu Hashim, they were the children of Imam Ali and the children of Abbas, the uncle of the Holy Prophet, Abbas ibn Abdul Muttalib. His children were there too. And amongst them were three brothers, Ibrahim, Safah, and Mansur. These three children of Hazrat Abbas who were present said, yeah, sure, we believe it. We'll follow along. We'll follow this Mahdi and we'll go and we'll overthrow the Banu Umayyah. The person who disagreed with this ideology was Imam Sadiq. Imam Sadiq said, this isn't the Mahdi. And lining up under him is a mistake if you call him the Mahdi. This is not the message that we want to give out. This isn't the correct message. This is a mistake. This is not the truth. Now, Muhammad ibn Abdullah, his father, Abdullah, stands up and says to Imam Sadiq, oh, you're just jealous. And he throws accusations at Imam Sadiq that you're refusing to accept that this is the Mahdi because he would outshine you then, and he would be more in charge than you and would take away all authority and power that you possess. Imam Sadiq, on the other hand, says, no, that's not the case, and that's not my intention. But he says, okay, you guys can do what you want to, but I'm not involved with this, and I'm stepping away from this. Now, there are two explanations that happen here. One explanation says that Imam Sadiq stepped away because he knew that this was a bad idea, and that this shouldn't be done, and that this would lead in failure and cause more corruption in the earth. The other idea that historians have presented, that the Imams thought that the uprising against the Banu Umayyah was a good idea. The problem he had was with labeling it as the rise of the Mahdi, because it wasn't. This wasn't the rising of Imam Zaman, and that this wasn't going to be the 12th Imam. This wasn't going to be the Mahdi from the children of Fatima to Zahra. So both arguments that are presented here basically essentially say that Imam Sadiq pulled away from his approval of this endeavor or his involvement in this endeavor. So in the year 126, the Banu Hashim, under Muhammad ibn Abdullah, as a collective, started to call people to themselves to avenge the murder of Imam Hussain and to rise up in power and to rise up against the Banu Umayyah, overthrow their government and establish a new government. Sure enough, the year 126, this process starts. The Umayyad Khulafa are very weak, and therefore by the year 132, the Umayyad Khulafa are overthrown. But when the Umayyad Khulafa are overthrown, it's not Muhammad ibn Abdullah who takes power and authority. Remember those three brothers, Ibrahim, Safa, and Mansur, the children of Hazrat Abbas? Safa steps forward and takes control of the government. And Safa established the government of the Banu Abbas. But a minute ago, they had agreed that they would unite under Muhammad ibn Abdullah, the son of Imam Hassan. They did. But he decided when power came to it, he took it away from them. Safa held power for 2 years, and then Safa died. Then his brother Mansur took up the mantle of power, and he became a despot and oppressive. So now the same Mansur and Safa, who not long ago were siding with their cousins, the Banu Hashim, were siding with the cousins and their children of Imam Ali to overthrow the Banu Umayyah, had now stolen power from the children of Imam Ali and began to kill the children of Bibi Fatima, to persecute them and to remove them so that their authority as the de facto representatives of the Banu Hashim would become absolute. This treachery led to the Banu Hashim, or the children of Banu Fatima, to gather together again and realize the treachery performed against them. And Muhammad ibn Abdullah ibn Hassan eventually had an uprising against Mansur, where he fought against Mansur and he raised an army against Mansur, and the popular opinion was in the support of Muhammad Nafs al-Zaki, the purified soul that is Muhammad. However, in the year approximately 145, this uprising was quelled, and Mansur had Muhammad ibn Abdullah killed, and his body was sent around and broken into pieces around the empire to show that he was killed and he was dead, and to end this movement of the children of Bibi Fatima against the Banu Abbas and cement the authority of Mansur. The title Muhammad Nafs al-Zaki, the purified soul of Muhammad, talks about the fact that Muhammad himself was a good person. He was a pious individual, and his intention was good, to remove the despots of the time and to establish a fair and just government, and that he was killed in the process of, after fighting against the empire of the Banu Umayyah. That was the empire of the Banu Abbas that killed him, after using him for leverage to overthrow the Banu Umayyah. Imam Sadiq lived through this entire event, and it happened during the imamat of Imam Sadiq. And it was these members of the Banu Hashim who didn't recognize the authority and the position of Imam Sadiq, and who rose up without him. And Imam tried to warn them, and they didn't listen. But what was very interesting was that Mansur and Safa sat in the same room as Imam Sadiq and swore that they would support Muhammad ibn Abdullah, that they would support the Banu Hashim altogether, that they would fight against the Banu Umayyah, and would promote that Muhammad should be the Khalifa and that authority should be given to him. And Muhammad was the Mahdi of the time. And Imam Sadiq warned everybody, don't do this. These people sitting right in front of you, this Safa, this Mansur, will never let power and authority reach you. But the Banu Hashim didn't listen to the Imam. And as a consequence, they used their leverage and authority to support someone other than the Imam. And eventually, as a consequence, they were all killed. The persecution of the Shia under the Banu Abbas, the persecution of the lovers of Ahlul Bayt, and khususan the children of Bibi Fatima, was worse under the Banu Abbas than it was under the Banu Umayyah. And the strange thing is, it was the children of Bibi Fatima who helped put them in power. And that's probably why they persecuted those people more, because they recognized that these children of Bibi Fatima have more authority and right than us. And if we let the people know them and be affiliated with them, they would prefer them over us. So it was the very cousins of the children of Bibi Fatima who were responsible for the spilling of their blood and for the murder of their families and for the destruction of their houses and the poverty of their children. And they brought it upon themselves when, instead of listening to Imam Sadiq, they thought they knew better. They thought they knew better what Allah's command and authority was than what the Imam was trying to warn them. Now understand something. Imam Sadiq at this point in time was not an unknown personality. When these people gathered together to rise up, he had been the Imam of the time for 12 years. He was the authority of Allah. He was the teacher of society. He was well known in presenting the teachings of Islam. But people were overcome by their desires, and as a consequence, they ignored the teaching of the Imam. One of the important lessons in this for us is that, inshallah, within our lifetimes is the dawr of our Imam. What will we do? Do we think we know better than the Imam? Do we think our intellect can compete with the knowledge of the Imam? There is some narrations that talk about and say that in the time of the 12th Imam, there will be those who were born following him who will turn against him. And why? Because they'll think they know better. When we talk about knowing the Imam of our time, one of the most important attributes about knowing the Imam of your time is knowing the absolute, unquestionable nature of his authority, not because of his lineage, but because of his knowledge and his position with Allah. That his position with Allah and his knowledge that comes from Allah and the necessity of what an Imam is mandates that no one can have a better intellect than him. No one can make a decision better than him. And that's where people will make the mistake. They will pit their knowledge and their experience against the experience and knowledge of the Imam. And they will imagine that what they can see and what they know is better than what the Imam knows. And the reason this is such a dangerous warning for us is that it's happened in history. And if we pay attention to the history, especially of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, we see the detrimental consequences that his own relatives had for competing with his intellect and imagining that they knew better. So it's one of the really important lessons from the life of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam to pay attention that an Imam is not someone who you argue with. An Imam is not someone who you debate with the intention of proving him wrong. We see many debates with the Imam. Some of them were very sincere in the process of learning from the Imam, that they weren't necessarily debates, but they were a series of questions and conversations that were intended to uncover the truth and find reality. But what Abdullah ibn Hassan did, what Muhammad ibn Abdullah did, was they argued and they debated with the intention of proving the Imam wrong, and imagined the Imam, na'uzubillah, to be jealous of the fact that the Mahdi was amongst them and wasn't Imam Sadiq. And that was a mistake. And that's a very important lesson for us to learn, is that the horrible consequences, and not just the consequences materialistically, but spiritually. Where do you think you're going to wind up when the authority of Allah disagrees with you and you refuse to listen to him? We can't imagine that the Imam is like a normal person. The Imam is the one who is the divinely appointed guide. A divinely appointed guide has to be absolute in his authority, has to have unquestionable authority. Otherwise, the absence of divinity proves him to be the same as us. The presence of divinity, meaning the divine guidance, of the support of Allah, of the position of the authority of Allah on this earth, means that whatever his decision is, there can't be a better one than that decision. and which is why we have to learn to respect and follow the instructions of the Imam. So when we look at this timeline and this experience that Mansur overthrows and quells the uprising of Nafz al-Zaki, the next thing he does is by year 148, he assassinates Imam Sadiq as well too, because he sees the danger that the children of Bibi Fatima pose to his authority. It's noted and narrated that at the death of Mansur, there were certain chests, cases that he possessed that he insisted and said, never open these until I die. So no one opened these chests and these boxes in his possession until after the death of Mansur. And when Mansur did die, and they opened those boxes, they opened these chests and these cases that he had, they found them filled with the heads of the children of Bibi Fatima, that he had been killing and hiding their corpses and saving their heads as a way for him to have satisfaction that his power and his ability to control the authority was secure and firm. This description and this series of events is intended to let us know that what was the actual time period of the political tumult that was going on during the life of Imam Sadiq. That this was a time period where we take a look and we say, yeah, the Imam was able to teach, and it's true. From the year 126 to approximately the year 132, 134, when the position of the Khulafa was changing and in flux, the Imam took advantage of that and spread knowledge far and wide. But he went through a lot of persecution. He went through a lot of abuse. And he went through a phase where his own family turned against him. And yet still he is that perfect example that had it not been for his great efforts, how would we have been attached to the true message of Rasulullah? Inshallah, next week we'll spend some time talking about detailing, understanding the teaching of Imam Sadiq, the extent of how far his teaching reached, the subjects he was teaching, and how it was that the world was influenced and guided by the hand of the son of Zahra, Imam Jafar ibn Muhammad as-Sadiq alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. We raise our hands in dua. ندعوك باسمك العظيم الأعظم الأعز الأجل الأكرم. يا الله 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 يا محمود بحق محمد، يا أعلى بحق علي، يا فاطر السماوات بحق فاطمة، يا محسن بحق الحسن، يا قديم الأحسان بحق الحسين. Ya Allah, by the rights of this Tuesday night, by the rights of Dua-e-Tawassul, by the rights of the pure, immaculate example of Ahlul Bayt, oh Allah, we have gathered here with sins, remove our sins and cover our flaws. Ya Allah, we have hajat in our hearts, by the rights of Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad, fulfill our hajat. Oh Allah, there are those amongst our families, our communities, and the mu'mineen who are suffering through sickness and disease. Give shafa'ah and cure and complete health to the mu'mineen wherever they may be. Oh Allah, those mu'mineen who are suffering through strife and insecurity and fear and war, give aman, security, peace to the mu'mineen and muslimeen wherever they may be in this world. Ya Allah, keep our children on the upright path of Islam. Ya Allah, give our children the tawfiq to follow the Ahlul Bayt and to live the example of Ahlul Bayt and Quran in their lives. Oh Allah, hasten the reappearance of Sahib al-Zaman. Make us and our families from the true and upright supporters of Sahib al-Zaman. Entitle us to ziyarat of Ahlul Bayt in this world and the shafa of Ahlul Bayt in the hereafter. Remembering all of our marhumeen, remembering all those who are in need of dua, 1 Surah Fatiha, 3 times Surah Ikhlas, with salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Maliki yawmiddin. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. صراط